How does a cell survive? How does a cell metabolize? All 8 billion of us all around the world right now that we are metabolizing at all times, right? So that is metabolism. It's essentially building and breaking down at the same time. So anabolism and catabolism. And that creates and uses energy. Either you store energy or you create energy and you use it. Mitochondria is the organelle, they call it organelle, the component of the cell that is responsible for the production of energy. So ketones have been around as long as the organisms that can metabolize fats, like way back when. So it is not a novel molecule where we're going to patent this, we're going to sell it for $50,000 to cure Alzheimer's. It's not.
An entrepreneur straight out of New York City, Michael Chernow. What's cracking?
What up, y'all? Creatures of Habit podcast, yet another fantastic episode that I am so excited to share with you guys. I've got a doctor on the show today, Dr. Latt Mansor, who is got an enormous amount of things that he's going to be able to talk to us about in that I'm excited to share with you guys. But the thing that I am most excited about is his current position as the research lead at H.V.M.N, the company that makes Ketone-IQ, one of my non-negotiables in my morning routine and also my afternoon routine. This stuff is exogenous ketones that are not only for people that are living a ketogenic lifestyle, although it is great for people that are living a ketogenic lifestyle because it helps you really stay in ketosis or helps kickstart your ketosis morning if you are doing keto, which I've done a couple of times. But really, I haven't done a ketogenic diet in a long time, and I use this stuff every single day. Why? Because it gives me a sort of like I don't want to say a burst because it's not like intense, but it gives me a constant flow of clean, sustained energy that is both physical and mental. And I love it for the morning because it really just like puts me in a headspace that I'm focused. And then also when I train, if I'm doing like a long endurance training session, if I'm doing a long bike ride, or if I'm doing a long row or a long run, I'll use it sort of halfway through to just give me that extra push that I'm looking for, both mentally and physically. And then if I'm just sitting at the desk or if I'm doing a podcast, I also pop open a shot of Ketone-IQ, and like I'm going to do right now. We're going to cheers and do it. And it just offers this really, really cool, thank you, sort of smooth, jitter-free energy without a crash that I really love. And so we're going to talk all about it because it's like hyper science in this bottle. And Dr. Latt is an expert in physiology and metabolism, which we all know if you pay attention to anything in the world of wellness today, that is like the focus. Like everybody's talking about metabolism, sleep, gut microbiome, things that are put into your body, how your body responds to them physically and mentally, and sometimes even spiritually. So, Doc, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. That was quite an ad. That can straight up to be an ad, like we would love that. And I thank you for clarifying that this is not a product just for ketogenic diet people, because that has been one of the most asked questions when we launched, because people are like, oh, I'm on keto diet, this is not for me, or like, can I drink this if I'm not on keto diet? And as you said, it is a form of fuel, and the way we like to see it is a form of micronutrient, a form of fuel that you can essentially consume regardless of whatever lifestyle or diet that you are on, and whatever activity that uses your brain, you will benefit from it.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think there's the only other thing that I have. Well, I'll start by saying, I've been on the H.V.M.N train for, I think it's got to be like 8 years or something like that. Like when they launched, I got those weird bottles.
The actual rocket fuel tasting. People think this tastes so bad.
Oh God! I mean, I remember I think one of those bottles was like $35. Right?
Correct. Those are ketone esters.
Ketone esters, and they were almost unbearable to take down, but I kind of loved it. And obviously, the brand has evolved. The flavor profiles have evolved in the product. And for me, it is a non-negotiable. I've got like my ideal morning routine where I'm home. I've got all my saunas and cold and the red lights and all those things. It's ideal. But I travel a fair bit, and I've had to distill my morning routine into a non-negotiable. And part of my non-negotiable morning routine is my Ketone-IQ. It is just, I take it with me everywhere. I have it on ice every single morning with my coffee. I literally like savor it. I love it. And the fuel and the energy and the clarity is kind of like hard to explain. It's hard to explain unless you're in ketosis, right? Like in ketosis, which is not something that I do often. I've done it. I've probably done a ketogenic protocol 3 times in my life, somewhere between 6 and 8 weeks at a time. I try to do it once every 12 to 18 months just to like clear out the system. But I hate doing it because it's fucking hard. But because I actually do it, like I actually get into ketosis. But the mental clarity that you have in ketosis is incredible. And I'm not energetically as strong as I am out of ketosis, but the mental clarity that I get in ketosis is amazing. And I will also just say, for anybody who is thinking about trying the ketogenic diet, like, don't do it without that. Don't do it without that, because like this in the morning just puts you into like 1.1, 1.5 millimolar immediately, right? Yeah. It just does, especially if you're in ketosis for a long time. So anyway, enough about ketogenic diet. I think it's important to talk about, A, I'd love to just get a quick little bio on you, and B, let's talk about this stuff.
Sure. Quick bio. I'll try my best. So I am from Malaysia, grew up there, and I didn't leave the country until my undergraduate. I did my undergraduate at University of Nottingham in the UK in biotechnology. And then right after that, I knew, I wanted to do a postgrad. So I decided to apply to the US instead, because I was like, I've seen Europe now. I want to look at the other part of the world. And this is one thing about me. It's like, I didn't grow up, in a rich family. I couldn't really afford traveling the world, but I've always known that I love traveling the world and love seeing different things and meeting different people. So the only way for me to do it is to be good at school so that I can get scholarship and get paid to live in all these different places. So I applied to Columbia University to do my master's in biotechnology as well. At that point, I focused a lot more on drug development, clinical trials, and whatnot. And then after that, I was like, you know what, like enough studying. I don't want to study anymore. I'm going to look for a job. And it was the hardest time of all, because it was like in 2010, so it was tough times. And I was an international student, so no companies would want to sponsor my visa on top of it being like economically tough time. So eventually I found a job after like 50 plus job applications, and I worked at a pharmaceutical company based here in Parsippany in New Jersey, because that was when I lived here for 2 years, and worked for them for half a year here. And then I got transferred full time and worked for them from the Munich office in Germany. And that was when I learned a lot about healthcare consulting, different pathways to optimize for hospital healthcare and all of that. And then during my time with them, that was when I got inspired to go back to school, because I saw so many PhDs and scientists in the company who are also very entrepreneurial and very eloquent in how they present science and how they translate science. And I was like, I want to be like that when I grow up, So I decided to apply for a PhD at University of Oxford. Got in at the Cardiac Metabolism Research Group, focusing on type 2 diabetic heart metabolism. So I looked at the metabolism of type 2 diabetic heart in hypoxia, which is low oxygen. And why we use low oxygen, we are using it as a subset of heart attack. Because when you have a heart attack, you have ischemia, lack of blood flow into the heart. But that has many aspects to it. You have lack of blood flow, you have lack of oxygen, you have lack of substrates going in, and then you have lack of waste going out. So in order to pinpoint the metabolism of the heart, so when you are in a PhD, you're in a very niche area, very narrow area. So we focus on specifically the oxygen part, because we know whenever we are in low oxygen environment, our organs, our systems react really, really quickly because of how important oxygen is within our body and for energy production. So that was what I studied for 4 years, 3 years and a half at Oxford. Came out, went back to Southeast Asia, worked at a startup, a diabetes management program for a year and a half, and then I came out, started my own company in health tech, helping people understand and interpret their blood test results, especially to help them boost the engagement they have with their doctors, because a lot of them, they believe that ignorance is bliss. If I don't know there's something wrong with me, then it's better than if I know there's something wrong with me. But then they don't realize that there are so many things, especially when it comes to chronic diseases, that are preventable and you can do something about it, especially if you catch it early on. In 2019, H.V.M.N. found me via their previous research lead, Dr. Brianna Stubbs, who also graduated from the same lab in Oxford with me 2 years apart. So I caught up with Brianna, and she was going to transition out of H.V.M.N. to go back into academia because she wants to do hands-on research. And I was looking for a position that allows me to translate science into an impactful work on a product end, as well as really have that messaging come across to the general population, which H.V.M.N. podcast, really allowed me to do. So I've been hosting the H.V.M.N. podcast since last October. You were one of my first few guests on there. Thank you very much for coming on to that one, where I didn't even know what I was doing. I was just going through the questions, like let's have a conversation. So I've learned a lot in the past year and started to make contents and all of that. And I've learned a tremendous amount. So that's my bio. That's as short as I try.
Dude, it's fantastic and obviously amazing. I mean, you've done so much. And you work for. It's funny because H.V.M.N. is this like super hardcore science-based company. However, I think they've bridged this really difficult gap between super science-based and like, I think fitness, anybody who's really using H.V.M.N. at this stage is really has really prioritized their wellness, right? And their optimization.
That's
right?
correct.
Like they're highly optimized human beings that are using this on a regular basis and considering this as something that could be beneficial to their life, right? I think we're starting to see more and more of that. Like I was just at this this sort of wellness showcase in the city a couple of weeks ago. This PR firm that represents some great brands, and there was a company there that had essentially taken like electromagnetic stim, and instead of using it for like recovery and like just stimulation for recovery purposes, they've actually turned it into a full body workout, which is unbelievable. A company's called Catalyst. It's so interesting to do it. Like literally there were basically nodes all over you, and you did this workout, and as the workout, it was like a 20-minute long workout, the intensity just got stronger and stronger, and it was contracting your muscles. And so
while you're working
out.
Okay.
So you're going into these positions like you're just boxing, and every time you put your arm out, it's like, and you're like, it's like I was sore for days. It was really crazy. It was super interesting. But I do think that there is the gap that you guys have bridged, sort of as like front runners, saying, hey, this is science. You guys are optimizers. Let us help. Like H.V.M.N. is a cool brand. Anybody who posts about H.V.M.N. are cool people, right? It's like I think you guys have done such a good job of trying to sort of everyday man explain what you are doing. And in some cases, it's just like for people that are like diehards, just do this. It's going to be good for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what we try to achieve, right? To be really cutting edge on the scientific forefront, right?
Can you tell us what it is, though? Just explain it to us.
What is ketones?
Yeah.
So ketones 101. Ketone is a molecule that your mitochondria could use to produce ATP, which is the energy currency in your cell. So essentially, it produces energy. It's the same use as fats or carbs or glucose. It goes into your mitochondria, it gets broken down, and ATP gets made. ATP is the form of energy that gets distributed around your body.
Just one more thing I want to unpack. Mitochondria, just quickly.
Mitochondria is a component of your cell. It's the powerhouse of the cell. So if you think about, if you look at it from a microscopic point of view, we have the human body. Human body is consisting of many systems. You have the cardiovascular system, you have the endocrine system, which is your hormonal system, you have the musculoskeletal system, which is your muscles and skeleton. And then the systems are made of organs. So your heart is an organ, your skin is an organ, your brain is an organ. And then you go a little bit down, zoom in a little bit more. All these different organs are made out of specific cells, specialized cells. In the heart, you have cardiomyocytes. In the brain, you have neurons. You have nerve cells. So you are going into the cell level. How does a cell survive? How does a cell metabolize? All 8 billion of us all around the world right now that we are metabolizing at all times, right? So that is metabolism. It's essentially building and breaking down at the same time. So anabolism and catabolism. And that creates and use energy. Either you store energy or you create energy and you use it. Mitochondria is the organelle, they call it organelle, the component of the cell that is responsible for the production of energy. So ketones have been around as long as the organisms that can metabolize fats, like way back when. So it is not a novel molecule where we're going to patent this, we're going to sell it for $50,000 to cure Alzheimer's. It's not. As you said earlier, if you're on a ketogenic diet, you will have ketones in your body because your liver breaks down fat to produce ketones. Now the question comes, why do we need ketones if we already have glucose and we already have fats, right? If you run out of glucose, if you are fasting or if you're on a keto diet, you can run on fats. If you are not on those, you can run on sugar. So why do you need ketones? It's because of the blood-brain barrier. There is a layer that stops big molecules from entering the brain. So usually the brain would run on glucose. But when you're on ketogenic diet or when you are starving, you have low sugar. So the brain is now running out of fuel. Fats cannot get past the blood-brain barrier because of its large size in molecule size. So it needs to be converted.
The fat molecule is too large to break through the blood-brain barrier.
Correct. So it needs to be converted into ketones, which are smaller molecules, to get past the blood-brain barrier. And then over time, as we do more research, we realize that not only ketones get past the blood-brain barrier and produce energy for the brain or supply energy source for the brain, it also increases brain activity and increases interaction between brain regions that we have seen. And it's the brain's preferred fuel if it's available. So, in fact, I interviewed this doctor, Dr. Tommy Wood. Don't know if you know him. He's based in Seattle. He has done a lot of work around brain health, around child development, infant brain development. And he said, actually, babies, they use ketones to synthesize fatty acids in the brain, to use that fatty acid as structural building blocks for the neurons, for your brain cells.
Wow.
So every cell, the outer layer, is made out of phospholipid bilayer. So they're fats. Mm-hmm. If fats cannot get past blood-brain barrier, where does the brain get the fats from, right? So apparently that's what they do. They break it down to ketones, take up ketones, and then reconstitute it, make fat, and then help with the structural development. Not only does it provide energy to your brain, it also plays a big role in development of these structures. And this is where it becomes interesting, because in adults, when you have traumatic brain injury, concussion, for example, it may possibly help with either mitigation of the damage or the recovery because of the vital role of ketones in helping the brain, one, function, just from an energetic point of view, and two, having the structural repair.
I mean, that is incredible. So like I would imagine that it's still very early days in the science of ketones and like what they're capable of doing. And I think before there was the idea of exogenous ketones, the only way to actually access it was to remove all sugar, right?
Yep.
All glucose.
Yep.
Because ultimately the body is not going to produce ketones with glucose, or at least
With insulin in there.
with insulin, right?
Yep.
So, and insulin is a hormone that ultimately ushers glucose into the muscles, right? And basically, insulin is exuded when sugar becomes essentially touches the bloodstream.
Yeah. The one good way to look at it is insulin is just a signal to tell the body, hey, you have a lot of energy, you have a lot of energy source, i.e. glucose. So we are going to signal different parts of the body to take up glucose and store it, because now you just finished food, you finished eating, and you have provided your body with ample source of energy, so you're going to store it. Ketone production is being kicked off because you're starving.
Mm-hmm.
So you are not in a state of abundance. So therefore, I need to create ketones to supply it to the brain. But if you already have glucose in your system, glucose can be burned much, much quicker and create energy much quicker. So the body will always choose the most optimal pathway for anything.
Path of least resistance.
Exactly.
Why is it that the brain functions, I don't know if it's more efficiently or potentially better with ketones and fat?
That's a great question. I don't think, well, at least I don't know from a mechanism of action point of view. All we know is that from clinical trials, when they looked at the functional MRI, they saw an increase in brain network stability, especially in aging young adults, because as we age, the stability decreases. And this stability is essentially a term where they define it as the interaction between brain regions. So when the different brain regions talk to each other, and we saw an increase, and they also saw, the activity increase. But the problem is to identify why. It's a bit harder, because I think we'll probably need an in vitro study. So take the brain cells out and really look into the molecular biology of things and see what pathway is the ketone going to activate in order to signal the increase in activity or the increase in functionality.
So when we're talking about, let's just use the example that you brought up earlier, concussion, right, which is a big topic of conversation for professional sport, all professional sport outside of maybe like golf and baseball, right?
Yep. And we submitted a grant application for TBI together in collaboration with the Naval Health Research Center based in San Diego. And we just got a request to submit a full proposal today, and hopefully we'll hear something back by early next year. But either way, we are also having the green light to run a pilot study already with the NHRC to look at if Ketone-IQ would help patients or individuals who have had traumatic brain injury, chronic traumatic brain injury, who are dealing with the long-lasting damage and effects from those injuries.
I mean, that's amazing. If you had to point out, for someone who's not familiar with ketones in general, if you had to point out 3 different use cases that would be considered optimal for introducing something like Ketone-IQ, what would they be for just a general human?
When we first launched earlier last year, we launched in January 22. We were like, okay, let's list down all these use cases, and the list was getting long because we have evidence of it helping with athletic performance, athletic recovery, cognitive benefit, metabolic health, cognition impaired individuals. So it became like, it almost sounded like a snake oil, that it does everything, right? You take this and you're like superhuman. I always tell people, this is a tool. You still need to make sure the foundational aspects of your life, i.e. your sleep, your activity, your nutrition, those has to be on point. Just one small shot of Ketone-IQ is not going to cure your chronic diseases that have been developing.
Or probably do anything if you're living a unfortunately shitty lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. So nowadays, the way I explain to people what's the best way to use Ketone-IQ would be whatever activity that uses your brain, take it 15 minutes to 20 minutes before. Take it with intention. Like you said, I take it before every podcast, religiously, because it does help me wire my brain up. I can be calm enough and not be overexcited. Even if it's a topic that I'm very passionate and excited about, I can calmly compose myself, explain complicated scientific concepts in a much more coherent and understandable way. I use it before workout just to get in the zone, as well as what I've also noticed is the lowering of my heart rate given the same intensity when I do it without. So I could push myself further, but it feels easier. So yeah, use it for before an exam, before a quiz, before a midterm, for students. Use it before an interview.
Brain food.
Yeah, brain food. Use it before you work out. Some people use it before bed, but that has a caveat to it. Some people experience very vivid dreams, which freak them out a little bit. But
I've actually never tried it before bed.
Do it right before.
Really?
Don't do it an hour before or like half an hour before. Literally have a shot and then go to bed. For the first 1 or 2 days, you might experience vivid dreams, but overall, I've heard people, me included, people improve their sleep quality. We've got an Olympic speed skater, Victor. He did a whole YouTube video of him trying Ketone-IQ for 30 days for performance, so pre-workout and recovery and sleep. And he measured all those parameters, like the speed that he does his workout on, the distance, the heart rate, the recovery score, the sleep score. He measured all of it, and go check out his YouTube videos, and it improved his sleep score. So
wow,
we're trying to run a study now, hopefully soon, with Johns Hopkins. We just had a preliminary discussion to look at Ketone-IQ helping with sleep apnea, and hopefully with that we can address both the therapeutic end, which is sort of helping with sleep apnea, and the health and fitness end, which is like just healthy people but still get an improvement in their sleep quality.
I'm like sitting here and I'm listening to you so intently and so focused. And
I can see that you're like so. I can see your like brain like.
I'm like, I'm so in, and I honestly like. I mean, I know we just took a shot of Ketone-IQ. There is no doubt about it that it does affect me. I don't question it. I don't like. You said you do it before a podcast so you can sort of articulately, but also in like a very concise way, explain science to potentially those that are not scientists, right? And as you're saying that, I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm like, I'm so focused on this dude right now. Like I'm listening to him so intently. It's so I never thought about taking it before sleep, because the truth is for me. So I take it in the morning. Mm-hmm. The number one without fail. I take it with me in the morning, next to my coffee on ice, after I do my like full morning routine. And what that does for me is it really does bring me back into like full on presence with my family and focus. And like in the morning, I like to, from 6:30 to 7:30, I am dad full time, husband full time. And so that is such an important part of my day that I have made a massive priority over the last 3 years that I didn't do before, quite frankly. And being able to like zero in and be focused in that time with like utilizing ketone. I don't know if anybody's ever shared that kind of use case for it, but like being present is hard for entrepreneurs. It's hard in general in our like hyper, we're in like a very hyper disruptive place, forgetting about what's going on in the world today, which is absolutely terrible. Just in general, every single thing that's in our periphery is trying to grab our attention today.
And you're required to multitask at the same time, like at all times.
Yeah, so I think that there's so many use cases for it. I've been a big fan for so long. And when you hear things like, the production of ketones that our body makes have been actually prescribed for epilepsy and things like that, where like doctors have literally said, okay, you need to eat this specific protocol so that your body can produce these ketones that are ultimately going to help alleviate the symptoms of this autoimmune disease, right? Like, or epilepsy. I don't know if it's an autoimmune. Is it autoimmune?
I don't think it is autoimmune. I don't know much about epilepsy, but I do know that keto diet has been prescribed for over 100 years to treat epilepsy, and it's very, very effective.
Yeah, one of the most effective. So I just, when you hear that and then now know that like it's not easy getting the body to produce ketones unless you put yourself in a starvation state or a, lack of glucose state, you can now have it. So this podcast is all about habit, right? I mean, it's all about habit, and also we've started to really focus on experts as well, as opposed to just habit, morning routine, evening routine, stuff like that. So I like having experts like you on the show to talk about a specific thing that is relevant. However, I would like to ask someone like you who is really at the forefront of high performance individuals, not only in product and in business, but like you have a podcast where you're communicating with and sort of in cahoots with some of the most high performing humans on the planet based on what you guys have created here. So what does your morning routine look like?
Before I go in there, I would like to also clarify a little bit the difference between Ketone-IQ, which is an exogenous ketone, versus keto diet, which is endogenous ketone, which is a ketone that we made.
Yeah.
We make inside our body. The difference in therapeutic areas and the use case may vary a little bit, because when you are on a diet, it's a systemic change that you're putting your body through. So you will perpetually be on low sugar and low insulin level. And that may have effect on diseases like epilepsy or even diabetes, for example, like Virta Health. They use ketogenic diet to treat diabetes. But for exogenous ketone, the beauty of it is that you don't have to adhere to any diet to get the ketones. So you get the benefit of ketones. However, because you are not adhering to any diet, that means you still have sugar and insulin in your system. Therefore, if you are doing keto diet to have those effects, Ketone-IQ may not be able to replicate that. Those are little nuance.
Got it. So don't have Ketone-IQ to help you deal with epilepsy or diabetes, right? Unless you are in a ketogenic protocol.
Right.
Because like the presence of that sugar,
yeah,
for lack of a better word, is ultimately the abstinence of the sugar is ultimately what is helping to aid in the resolve of those problems that you're dealing with.
Yes, although Ketone-IQ have been shown to decrease blood sugar after you eat food. If you measure your blood sugar an hour later, it will drop up to 50 points. That has been published by University of British Columbia by Dr. Jonathan Little. So a couple of papers there, you can search for it. Now we just signed a contract to run a study with his colleague, Dr. Sarah Purcell, to run a study looking at effect of Ketone-IQ on appetite suppression. Because most people, when they have it, they use it complementary to their fasting lifestyle. They don't feel as hungry, but they are much more productive compared to when they are, hungry and fatigued.
And so one question before you get into your morning routine.
Yes, sorry.
No.
I got sidetracked.
No, it's good. It was a very good call out. It's 70 calories a shot.
Yes.
Where are those calories, like, typically calories are quantified through macronutrient, right? Fat, carbohydrate, protein.
Mm-hmm.
Where are these, the ketones themselves are, what, like you said, essentially a new macronutrient.
Correct. It's the fourth micronutrient. That's what we love to tell people. I think it was our co-founders, Michael and Jeff. They coined. I think they heard it somewhere or they coined it themselves. I haven't even joined the company then. It was way before my time. And
macro.
They call it the fourth macronutrient because it enters the mitochondria and enters the Krebs cycle via conversion to acetyl-CoA, which is the common molecule that goes into the Krebs cycle that produces energy. So it stands, to call it the fourth macronutrient because it has calories. Like you said, it contains calories. It produces energy. So, and you have to take it on a, when you think about macro, it's big, right? Micro is small. Why are they called macronutrients? Because when you eat proteins, carbs, and fats, you eat by the grams. Micronutrients like minerals, you eat by the milligrams and the micrograms. So you only need very little to make any big difference within your body. You need it to be in optimal zone. This is something I always talk about. You need to be in optimal zone for metabolism. Just because something is good doesn't mean that more is better. You need it to go up at the optimal level, stay up there as long as possible. So ketones, this one has 10 grams. Again, you go by the gram. And if you take 10 milligrams of ketones, it's not going to do much. So that's also another way of like making people realize, oh, that's why we call it macronutrients and not micronutrients. And it's not like a multivitamin.
So does it though? I mean, I would assume not because I have experience here, but in terms of if someone is an intermittent faster, which there's way more intermittent fasters today than ever before, but also way more intermittent fasters than ketogenic diet people. So does it break a fast?
So we've visited this question a couple of times, and I've asked even experts like, Cynthia Thurlow, she talks about fasting a lot, discussed this with Dr. Mindy Peltz as well. Our conclusion is that it does not. And the reasons being, one, it's only 70 calories. If you look at Dr. Walter Longo's research, he has been on like Goop, and Gwyneth Paltrow has tried his fast mimicking diet. His fast, and I just recently interviewed him for H.V.M.N. podcast, so his episode should be out in like 2-3 weeks. We talked about fast mimicking diet, which contains between 400 to 700 calories per day for 5 days, and that was enough to kickstart the fasting benefits. So you don't need to completely starve yourself. And this is especially important for
with 400 to 700 you kick off autophagy?
Yeah, that's what they have seen. And this is especially important for cancer patients who are already weak to begin with. So you can still kick off those kind of benefits without them going into malnutrition. So one, the calories. Two, what usually kick you out of autophagy or kick you out of fast, it's usually the increase in insulin. Ketones have no effect on insulin. Glucose does, right? So 10 grams of ketones will not be the same as 10 grams of glucose. Granted, 10 grams of glucose is only 40 calories. So I don't know. We have to run the study to see, to measure the insulin increase with 40 grams of glucose and then measure any biomarkers that's associated with autophagy. So those are the two reasons as to why I don't think just one shot or even 3 shots of Ketone-IQ would break your fast. I myself tried a 48-hour fast before, have nothing except water and Ketone-IQ. And on the end of the fast at 48 hours, my ketone levels were at 2 millimolar. But the last time I had Ketone-IQ was more than 6 hours ago. So theoretically, whatever ketone that I was measuring was not due to Ketone-IQ. Because what we've seen in our internal study with dose response, even at a higher dose, when you have Ketone-IQ, it will go up and it will peak about 2-3 hours. And then it will start coming down. And about 6 hours, you will still stay above 1 millimolar. But for me to get 2 millimolar, it's definitely my own ketone production.
For sure. That's what I've noticed too. When I experiment with Ketone-IQ in a fasted state, I will always get to like 1 to 1.1 millimolar. Within I probably take my blood like an hour and change afterwards just to test it.
Yeah.
But by the way, like really hard to get there without like it's just hard to get the body. People that I've talked to about the ketogenic diet, like, they're like, oh yeah, I've been doing keto for 8 months. I'm like, I doubt it. Like I doubt it. There are some people that are true, but to be in ketosis for 8 months is like it's like a very, very it's not. I think one of the things that I have learned to love and believe is that protein synthesis is kind of one of the, like, I really do believe that it is like the key to longevity. Like I do. And I know that, like, you know, you'll hear doctors that say, well, just eat less and you'll live longer. But I also think that, like, what is the standard of life? If you're literally like, okay, I want to live to 120, but I'm only going to eat one meal a day. Like, are you stoked about life? Are you happy when everybody else is enjoying, like, breakfast and dinner, and you're like, no, I'm going to have, like, one meal at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? I'm just kind of like, I just don't see the benefit of that. Like, that is, you know, food is life. Like, that is what brings people together, you know? Like, is that something that we should be promoting?
I think you pointed out a really, really interesting point and really important point, that protein and protein synthesis or muscle mass synthesis is essential for longevity, because we have seen again and again in studies that increasing muscle mass also increases brain activity, BDNF, like the brain-derived neurotrophic factors, increasing the hippocampus size and essentially grow, and that helps with learning and memory. And those are closely associated, or the decline of those are associated with neurodegenerative diseases, Alzheimer's, dementia, and all of that. So in order to grow old and live the quality life, I think it is very important to have muscle mass. And a lot of people are like, oh yeah, you don't need to get jacked. I'm not asking you to get jacked, but have like high muscle mass. And it's very relative, right? Like, I'm not asking you to be 80 and like pumping steroids and be like ripped and jacked. Like, that may not help you and might produce more stress onto your cardiovascular
100%.
system. But having some form of lean muscle mass definitely help with brain health, definitely help with stabilization, mobility, because those are also very important, because fall is one of the top reasons why elderly people die, because they fall, they break their bones, they puncture their organs, and then they have internal hemorrhage, right? So that's why I think we should look at, you know, longevity as a seesaw and also as a wave system. It's keeping that wave within the optimal zone. Back to metabolism. You know, yes, something is good for you. So, for example, you want mTOR to be downregulated, and the one way to do that is to eat less and to fast and calorie restrict. But after a long time of doing that, if you've been doing that since you're 40, by the time you reach 80, would that be the same? No one knows, right? Like, do you need to do that when you're 70, going to 80, or are you doing it very early? If you're doing it very early and then you short your metabolism, and then what if your body starts clinging onto fats and don't want to, because you're eating so little, so the body is like, I'm always on survival mode. I'm not going to build muscle because fat is more calorie dense, it's more energy dense, so this is a better form of storage. I don't care about how you look. The body will say, I don't care how you look because I care about survivability. I want to survive, so I'm going to hold on to this. So this is a very nuanced conversation, because a lot of people, they expect experts, they expect scientists, and they want us to just tell them, do one thing and they'll live forever healthy. There is no one thing. I wish I could tell people that there's one diet you can follow and that will clear you of any problems in your life. I wish I know that. Everyone does. And you hate it when people say, it depends. I always tell people, my favorite, I'm a scientist, I'll give a presentation and I'll tell people, at the end of this, you'll have questions. And just to warn you, my favorite answers are, maybe, it depends. I like, what would you use it for? Those are my favorite phrases.
You know what's so interesting though? So I love coaching people, with fitness and nutrition, entrepreneurial stuff. So I coach some folks, and everybody really does want to be shredded, right? It's just, everybody really does want to be shredded. And I have had the pleasure of pushing my body to the absolute brink, right? I've gotten down to 3% body fat a number of times, which is, I don't recommend that to anybody. I do recommend anybody trying to hit somewhere between 7 and 10% body fat and trying to see if they can do that, because it's really kind of like an interesting push of mental, physical, and, by the way, spiritual, performance. But I think, so when I work with somebody and they're like, okay, I want to get shredded, I'm like, you actually don't want to get shredded, but you do want to get lean. And I know the science of what it takes, right? And I'm happy that you mentioned sort of like the body holding onto fat in this fight or flight state, right? Like, I would never prescribe somebody a 5-day-a-week strength program with running cardio or long high-intensity cardio, long high BPM cardio, because those two things are very counter. When somebody's like, I really want to lose body fat, I'm like, okay, well, we're going to resistance train 3 to 5 days a week, depending on where your level's at, and then I'm going to put you on a treadmill at an incline, and we'll walk for 30 to 40 minutes, and at a certain point, depending on how far you want to go, we'll increase it from 3 days a week to 5 days a week. Maybe we'll increase the time. And they're like, walking on a treadmill, like, how? I don't understand. Like, don't you want me to go run like miles? And I'm like, no, because what happens when you bring your BPMs, your heart rate north of about 135, your body goes into survival mode. It's like, oh shit, we need to protect this thing. Like, anything could be happening right now. There could be a storm, there could be people chasing me. Like, I need to go into survival mode. I am going to utilize the muscle because I know the fat is going to protect me. The fat's going to protect me. The muscle is not going to protect me necessarily, but the fat is going to protect me. So it does end up burning the fat. And that's why you look at marathoners, long distance runners, and typically the top tier of them are 0% body fat and very, very skinny. Just like long and skinny for the most part. Even the small guys look long and skinny, And so it's just, there is real science to all of these things. Mm-hmm. It's, and I think anybody that's listening here, like, just little hint, like tip, if like, oh, I want to burn fat and gain muscle, like, I've seen it work. I've seen that actually happen. I've done it myself. It's not nearly as effective as gaining muscle by eating a bunch of food and not doing cardio, because that is really how you will pack on size, and then you trim it down. But you can lift weights and do low intensity steady state cardio, not bring your heart rate above 130, 135, and burn a bunch of fat. And so it's just so interesting how I think that the way people think about stuff like this is just skewed.
Very skewed.
It's skewed.
Yeah. Because they are looking for one answer, and they'll hear one answer on social media, and it may or may not be true. It may be misinformation, but it could be true for one person for a specific situation. But when it comes to metabolism, as much as we talk about generalization in science and we run studies and all of that, ultimately, if you want to change your metabolism, it has to be personalized to you. What are you doing on a daily basis? What is sustainable for you? What can you adhere to? Whether a diet or a workout regime, what can you actually adhere to? What's feasible for your schedule? Mm. And then what are your goals? How long do you have? Are you aiming for the 2-week transformation, or are you going for the long term, right? Every single aspect of that, and I'm learning it myself. Like, a lot of people, they're like, oh, what do you know? You haven't lost weight before. And then I show them my overweight pictures when I was, growing up. I've lost those weight before. But I'm still, learning so much about my own body. Like, right now I'm working with the coach to do exactly what you just said. I live 4 days a week, and then the other 3 days I'm literally walking up. I'll alternate between walking uphill, ellipticals, and bike, as long as I monitor my heart rate in cardio zone 2. Do it for 40 minutes to 60 minutes, and that's fine. And then I've been able to pack on 600 more calories per day without gaining any weight. And the only explanation to that is that I am basically increasing my basal metabolic rate. So 100%. When people always ask, how do you increase your metabolism? How do you speed up your metabolism? Can I eat this and speed up metabolism? It's a combination of factors. It's a combination of factors of what kind of food you're eating, right? Quality food, whole foods, how much activity you're doing. And I'm not just talking about just at the gym, activity outside of the gym. You spend 2 hours max, 3 hours max at the gym. What about the other times? If you're just sitting down, lying down, you're not burning much calories. gonna go for your 10K walk, 10K steps walk, right? Those little things eventually come into this big picture, and then you start seeing results, and then you're like, okay, everything clicks now.
Totally. All right, man, let's wrap this thing up with your morning routine. I would love to hear about your morning routine.
Right, my morning routine. So I've started doing meditation, I think about a year and a half ago, and that changed my life. So only 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night, guided loving kindness meditation. One biggest benefit that came out of that, of me starting meditation, was realizing my self-worth. And I talked about this quite a few times in both our podcasts and external podcasts, is that growing up in Asia, most of the time my worthiness was closely associated with my possessions. What degrees I have, what school I went to, what job do I have, how much do I get paid. Very materialistic stuff. And I've grown up that way. And I never stopped and looked at myself. It's like, am I worth it just as a person, as Latt Mansor? Take out the doctor, take out everything else. If I don't own anything right now, am I worth it? And then the answer needs to be yes. Because when you look at yourself, you need to make sure you are worth it, regardless of anything you possess. Because if you don't think that, nobody else will. So that really changed my perspective and really let me have happiness from the inside out, rather than seeking it from the outside in and looking for things and people to fill that void. So that's one very important thing.
And just so for the listener, like, is there a specific app that you use?
No, I haven't. I think it was a meditation workshop or seminar that I was curious about. I joined, and then it was Pat Smith, now a friend of mine, very inspiring individual. He trained under Dr. Joe Dispenza. So he was like, go get, the morning, evening meditation, guided meditation for $20. I was like, I'll try it. Did the first time. I remember, like, I was bawling, I was crying. I was like, what is happening?
So is it the same meditation every day?
It's the same guided one, but the mindset the way I do it is like I combine it with loving kindness. So follow the guide, but I let my mind go into one of the 3 different loving kindness meditation. So either one is like you focus on one thing, either your breathing or like a spot on your forehead or something, just one thing. And then you realize when your mind wanders, you bring it back. That helps you focus. The second type is well wishes. May I be well, may I be kind, may I be happy.
It's a mantra almost?
It's almost like a mantra. And then after you say may I, you think of people close to you. Like you have your wife, your children. May my wife be kind, may my wife be happy, yet so on and so forth. You can do that. And then the third type is just to let go. Like literally imagine your thoughts as a river. And the river will have, fish coming up or stones, but just observe. Like see yourself as a third-party observer of your thoughts, and it's very interesting, like where your thoughts go. Especially when you're like, I'm gonna let go of the steering wheel, and let it run. You're like, what is my mind doing right now? But it's very interesting to take yourself out and let it run, and then you will have less attachment to things in the world. And that is both, some people, they want to be attached. They want to have that drive, which is great, whatever works for you. But some people, because of the attachment, because of the clinging onto material stuff that causes those suffering, it's because even though we know nothing is permanent, everything is ever changing within our bodies as well, right? I always talk about metabolism. All these chemical reactions are happening at all times, right? That is metabolism. Same thing with the world. Everything is changing at all times. So nothing is permanent. So knowing that and being able to just let go when things happen, whether it's good or whether it's bad, it allows you to just live.
Where can people find that specific meditation?
Joe Dispenza's website. That's where I bought it. And then loving kindness meditation, I found them via a podcast actually by Dr. Amishi Jha on School of Greatness. But then she talks about this loving kindness because she did she is funded by the military, by SOCOM, I believe, to do meditation, 12 minutes meditation per day with military personnel. And then that increased focus. So that was what perked my attention, because I'm like, okay, this is science. This is, this is not woo-woo. Let's look deeply into this and see where the validity is. And then that was when I found her mentor, who's Jack Confield, based in Bay Area, in Marin. So they are called the Spirit Rock Foundation. So if you just Google that, you'll find Spirit Rock Foundation. They have just a one-pager on like different kinds of loving kindness meditation that I just described. And you can it's easy to follow. It's literally like, a guide for dummies, because I didn't know nothing. I did not know anything about meditation before. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm just closing my eyes. I'm going to fall asleep. Like literally before I started doing that, I always thought meditation will make me fall asleep, because all I'm doing is just sitting there with my eyes closed in a quiet room. But then after doing it, I'm like, wow, this is powerful. And I managed to introduce it to quite a few of my friends who, thankfully changed their lives. And I'm grateful that it helped them.
What else in the morning?
What else? Nowadays, I just implemented maybe about 2 months ago breakfast. And as simple as it sounds, because as you said, there are more intermittent fasters than anything these days, and intermittent fasting has been shown to be very powerful. But the same problem I was doing it for far too long, and my body was not recognizing that I am also in an abundance state of food, that I can metabolize them, and therefore I should increase my metabolism. So one of the things that I started doing was having breakfast and splitting my meals into 4 meals, 3 to 4 meals instead of just 1 or 2, because that allows my body to absorb those proteins, and I increase my protein intake as well. So that allows my body to absorb those proteins more efficiently and not just break down the amino acids.
I got to get you some meal 1, man. You got to start throwing it in there. You'll love it.
Yeah, I'd love to. I heard great things about it. I haven't tried it myself, so I'm just waiting.
You got a big package coming your way.
There you go. So that's one big thing that I've started doing. It was a hassle at first, because it's one thing. I think why people do intermittent fasting is that, one, it works, right? You have calorie restrictions, so people started losing weight. But most importantly, you don't have to think about it. Like you wake up, you do your thing, and then you eat at lunch.
And it's so funny. People are like, to me, with meal 1 specifically, they're like, so what is the problem that you're solving? And I'm like, I'm taking the thinking out of the first meal of the day. Like, it's a thoughtless thing. It's like a perfect meal. And the problem that you just very clearly stated, it's such a pain in the ass thinking about what to have for breakfast, or making breakfast, or the time it takes. This is like, you mix it for 30 seconds before bed and it's done. You pull it out of the fridge in the morning.
How much protein is that?
30
wow.
grams of protein.
Amazing. Yeah, because usually I'll have the same thing every day. I'll have frozen berries with whey protein. Actually, it's a blend. It's a protein blend of whey and casein smoothie. And then 3 eggs.
So that you're probably getting
about 40, 50 grams.
Yeah. So what I do with this is, if I want to, when I'm like in a hardcore bulk or something like that, I like to get 50 grams of protein in my 3 major meals. So basically I have my meal 1, my meal 2, my meal 3, all 50 grams of protein. So I'll add a scoop of protein to this when I'm making it at night, so it'll make it 50 grams. And then in my snacks, I'm having somewhere between 15 and 25 grams of protein. So, roughly throughout the day, I'm having roughly 200 grams of protein.
That's what I have to aim for every day.
Yeah, 200. So that just makes it it's just so easy, and it's also freaking delicious. And like the macro split on meal 1 is like, it doesn't get better, in my opinion. To get 30 grams of protein in under 500 calories, because typically when you're getting 30 grams of protein, there's all sorts of other things that come along with it.
Yep.
This is like 350 calories, but you're still getting 30 grams of protein. You're still getting 35 grams of carbs. You're getting about 10 grams of fat. Anyway, enough cells for
that's
that.
The thing, the carbs part. Coming out of a low-carb diet and in the keto community, going to now I have to eat 210 grams of carbs per day.
Mm-hmm.
My trainer was like, dude, you gotta eat your carbs.
Yeah, I know.
You know,
It's one of those things.
This is for
It's
people
hard.
who are lifting heavy, who are trying to like fix their metabolism, right?
Yeah.
We talk a lot about metabolism and metabolic flexibility. And metabolic flexibility is the ability of your body to use different substrates, fats, glucose, or ketones, at a given time, given the situation. If you're sprinting, you want to use glucose more. If you are doing cardio zone 2 run, you want to use your fat storage, right? Like we talked about. So while keto diet, intermittent fasting, calorie restriction, all of that, it works very well. Sustainability, that's one. How long can you sustain it? But two, switch things up a little bit when you are going through a change, because our bodies change. Hormonal change, we age, goals change. You know, whereas before I was overweight, I just wanted to lose weight. Whereas now I want to build more muscle and lose more fat. So the problem I was facing is that I was overweight, eating, trying to lose weight. Years later, I was not overweight, but I was still eating like an overweight person trying to lose weight. Which means, one, I'm under-eating protein. Two, I'm under-eating calories. And three, I'm eating all my proteins in 1 or 2 meals, which means I'm not even absorbing the entirety of that protein that I'm taking.
Because your body can roughly only metabolize about 50 grams of protein per serving, right?
Yep.
And also, when you're not eating enough, you are ultimately slowing down the metabolism, which ultimately makes it harder to metabolize food. And you know, it's not. I think the system is essentially fucked, or what we've been taught. You know, dude, this has been such a fun time.
No, it's a pleasure. I've been looking forward to this because we've been trying to schedule this, and I was like, okay, I need to like make sure I've got all this ready, and okay, I've got these people in New York as well, and let's do all of this together. So, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
I'm grateful to have you, and I think even me, you really helped me break down the ketone thing. I think I thought I knew pretty much everything there was to know about it because I've dove into it, but now the way you kind of broke it down in simple terms really just helped me to visualize it a little bit better. So I'm sure you did that for the audience as well.
Yeah.
Where can people follow along?
People can find me at Latt Mansor, LattMansor, on all my social media, and at H.V.M.N. on social media as well. And you can check out the podcast, the H.V.M.N. podcast with Dr. Latt Mansor, on all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube even. There's always the website, hvmn.com, and I believe you have your code that you probably can share with your audience as well for a discount. It's like come full circle, you know, me interviewing you. I didn't even know you, and we were just chatting, you know, via webcam, and finally get to meet you in person. And I'm just, you know, I've always just look at your stories, and I'm like, God damn, he's like, how can he do all this? You know, entrepreneurship and eat healthy and family, and now he's ripped too. I'm like, it just made the rest of us feel bad.
Well, dude, you know what, man? I think the community that we surround ourselves with makes doing those things. I don't want to say easy, but I'm inspired because I've surrounded myself with a community of people that are always looking to level up. Everybody wants to be better, and it's not about being the best. It's about every day taking a step towards better. And if that means 1%, 0.5%, 10%, 100%, whatever it is, we all should commit to trying to be a little bit better, you know? And I know that that's the ethos of the brand at H.V.M.N. So I'm super stoked to be a part of the family, to now meet you in person, and to get to know you, man.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, pleasure mine. And we're just starting, you know? We're just starting. So many more new things to come. I think next year people can definitely look forward to way more studies, because now that I've, you know, the H.V.M.N. podcast is established, my content is like, you know, I've got an engine going, you know, I know what I'm making content wise, so I can sort of put that into sort of automation, and then now I'm putting full gear on to the research. That's what I'm saying. It's like we've got a full grant on TBI with NHRC. We've got appetite suppression study with UBC. We've got a sleep apnea study with Johns Hopkins. We got a firefighter study looking at sleep deprivation, shift work, and immune system with Tallahassee, with FSU. We're looking at what else? 2 hospitals in Australia got approved using Ketone-IQ to treat ICU patients with TBI as well. So those are multi-centers studies, and can't wait to see the results. A cardiovascular study, heart failure. This is in Denmark with Aarhus University. The professor submitted the grant application to use Ketone-IQ on 250 heart failure patients over 30 days and looking at the results. So we'll find out Q1 next year as well. So all these studies are coming out. So that's what I'm saying. We are just starting. Like, we already know how much Ketone-IQ can help people from a cognitive standpoint, from a performance standpoint. We've got Olympians using it. We are sponsoring some Olympians next year, Olympics in Paris. And we have, people like yourself who are like leaders in the area already using it on a daily basis. Now with all these studies coming out, it's just a matter of time before it's being recognized as a 4th micronutrient that's not only providing you with energy, but also may help you treat diseases.
Ladies and gents, boys and girls, people of all ages, I hope you got as much value as I did in that podcast. Dr. Latt Mansor really brought the thunder today to talk to us about not only Ketone-IQ, H.V.M.N, but really walk us through this sort of scientific journey that the company's been through over the last, I think it's almost been 10 years, if not 10 years, that they've launched the business. It's incredible to hear all the new science that's coming out. I love having experts on the podcast that can talk to us about what they do in the morning. From, literally having a scientist on the show talking about meditation is like very weird. It's like it's not something that you see every single day. Typically, scientists are like meditation, schmeditation. That's not happening. It needs to work on paper or in a pastry dish to actually make sense. So it's very, very cool to see that in real life. I really appreciate you guys tuning in to the podcast. It means the world to me. If you would share this podcast with a friend or family member, that would be everything. And a little bit more cherry on top, icing on the cake, if you took 2 minutes out of your day to write a review and give us a 5-star rating. That would mean the world. I say it every single time on every single episode because it is truly one of the most important ways, or one of the most powerful ways, for us to continue to keep this podcast afloat. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys. And until the next one, y'all, peace.